Welcome to episode 2 for April 2024 of the BV Magazine podcast. As ever, your most endearing snapshot of life in rural Dorset. Hello from me, Terry Bennett.
And hello from me, Jenny Devitt.
In this episode, I catch up with the owners of the FOLDE Bookshop in Shaftesbury and hear how they turned their lockdown dream into the reality of a bookshop that's now competing for national awards.
And I talk to Peter Sale, chairman of the Shaftesbury Rotary Club, about the successful and enthusiastic junior version, RotaKids.
And, at last, the works around Sturminster Newton's historic bridge are complete and the barriers have gone. We gain an insight into the elaborate and costly works involved in the project, most of which went unseen by frustrated motorists stuck in traffic queues. Well, I'm joined today by Karen Brazier and Amber Harrison of the FOLDE Bookshop in Shaftesbury. Ladies, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about the bookshop. You've recently won an award, the British Book Awards Independent Bookshop of the Year for the South West. So you must be doing something right, but you've not been doing it that long. Just tell us a little bit about the history.
Well, we are 3 years old. We often jokingly refer to this shop as our pandemic-induced midlife crisis because we opened on the day that non-essential shops could reopen after the last lockdown. But the idea for it came actually well before the pandemic when Amber and I, who are neighbours, our gardens back onto each other and we'd become friends, we sort of saw in each other a recognition that we were a little bit tired and maybe jaded with our corporate jobs, which were taking us away from Shaftesbury. Mine, wasn't very far away, but it was a very full-on job with long hours. And Amber's job took her geographically away because she spent a good part of the year travelling overseas. And we felt that we sort of wanted to do something that would root us more in our community. We love Shaftesbury. It's a wonderful town, but I was only ever really seeing it at weekends and Amber sometimes less than that. And we sort of hit upon this idea of going into business together. And quite soon, I think, we were sort of searching around. We knew what kind of lifestyle we wanted. We wanted to walk up into town together, and to open the door to a lovely shop and perhaps put the coffee on. But the idea, because we're a nature-themed bookshop and gallery, the idea came from our deep love of the nature of Dorset and recognition for how that had really helped us when we were dealing with our more stressful jobs. And it came from there, really.
Okay, and you allude to the fact that you were not in the book trade at all previously. I'm not sure who was who here. Head of Sustainability, one of you, and a Director of Marketing. Which one was which?
I was Head of Sustainability. It makes me feel a little bit funny thinking about the amount of travelling that I used to do. And Karen was Head of Marketing for a private school. But one of the things we found was really helpful was bringing both of those sets of skills to the job. We did think originally, we had this kind of notion when we'd sit down and talk about a bookshop that you would be able to sit there and nice pot of coffee or a sticky bun and read the books, chat to people coming in. But we found out since there isn't a lot of time to actually do that.
Well, I'm sure that's right when you're running a business. Take me through the decision process here, because it's one thing sort of having chats over the garden fence, as it were, during the pandemic and dreaming about this idyllic little shop you might create. It's another thing actually making that happen and taking the step and taking the risk that involves. How did you eventually decide to take the leap of faith?
Well, I suppose we were quite sensible about it. I mean, I whenever anyone asks us about this, the first thing I want to say is that I am not a risk taker. I never have been. This is the riskiest thing I've ever done. And I'd always had that sort of view, I suppose in a way that was part of my upbringing, is that you work hard at school, you go to university, you get on a career ladder, you try to progress, and you do everything by the book, no pun intended. And when we hit upon this idea, I think we just took a really measured approach, actually. We launched it first online as a kind of journal, and we launched our Instagram account, which has now become quite big for us as a driver of footfall. But we were an online journal and we were exploring some of the themes that we loved. So recommending walks that we enjoyed, talking about books we'd read, and sort of grew a little online community. And I think that was in the summer of 2020. So obviously in lockdown, there was time to do this sort of thing. And then we launched a little e-commerce offering in the October, I think, selling a few books by Little Toller, the independent publisher in Dorset, and some lovely prints from local artists, all on a nature theme. And it was really to test the proposition and to see whether people understood what it was we were trying to do with FOLDE. And to our surprise, it actually worked quite well. And so, I mean, Amber was packing orders in her spare bedroom. We weren't allowed to work alongside each other at various points in various lockdowns. We were sort of hand delivering things at the end of a broomstick almost when local people were ordering from us. But I think it gave us the confidence that there was something in this idea that we had. And I think realistically, we'd thought, well, we'll build the online and maybe we'll keep up our day jobs and we'll build the online. And, when it gets to a certain point, and if a nice shop becomes available in Shaftesbury, we'll go for it. But the nice shop in Shaftesbury became available much sooner than we had anticipated. So we're at the very top of Gold Hill and we saw the premises, we saw the previous business was closing it was sort of Twixtmas of 2020, I think. And Amber said, well, she found out who the landlord was and said, well, let's go and at least have a look. And really, before we knew it, we had the keys and it was a question of, so I think we're doing this then. And we spent the last lockdown doing the place up. And then, as we say, we opened when all non-essential shops could reopen.
That was April 21. And did you have a vision for the shop at that stage? There's lots of bookshops around. I'm guessing there's others within striking distance of Shaftesbury, not too far away at all. How did you decide what would make yours different, Amber? Just talk me through that process.
Well, there were quite a few things. I mean, it was a great leap of faith because the shop, when we looked at it, didn't look anything like it looks now. So we had to kind of use quite a bit of visual imagination. But there were some things that we knew were important. Bookshops are genuinely very welcoming places, and we wanted to make sure that it felt welcoming. So our choice of colour for the walls, a sort of a soft greenstone green, was important. And we wanted it to be somewhere where people felt that there was something for them. Because if you have nature-themed bookshop on the outside of the door, people might think, that's not for me. It's probably terribly earnest. There's a couple of slightly enraged middle-aged women in the middle of it. I'm mildly terrified to go over the doorstep. But thankfully, both our partners are very good measurements against which we can evaluate if a shop is pleasing to go into or not. So there were things like that we took into consideration. We looked at a lot of other shops and got inspiration from how they made it welcoming, and things about flow. We're a long, thin shop, so making sure that people don't feel stuck at one end was really important. And having greetings cards, so if people thought, well, it's not for me, but at least I could go and look at the cards and then politely potter out if it's not right. Those were all things that we thought about. And when we first opened, we look back at the photographs now, 3 years on, and it was very minimalist and it felt often quite sparse. I think we had 6 books spare in the back. And now we are absolutely jam-packed with books, and pretty much every surface has got something interesting to look at. So it's that kind of retail thing about serendipitous discovery, they call it, that you might find something interesting wherever you look. And so far that's worked really well for us.
And from what I gather, it's become more than just a bookshop, and I guess that was always your intention, that it would be more than just a bookshop. It's become something of a community hub, from what I understand. That people actually come there as a destination and to meet others and have a chat and generally hang out. Is that right?
It certainly has become a bit of a destination. I think partly that's because, as Karen mentioned earlier, we built up and shared online what we wanted to do, and people have followed us along our story. And when we were decorating and listing the music we were playing, people say, what are you doing? What's happening next? Where are you coming? So people are very keen to have followed us and to see the final result. And that's been lovely. We have people who visit us from overseas, or they're recommended by other local businesses, which is great. But I think one of the things that's been eye-opening for us is bookshops feel a very safe space. So particularly just after the pandemic, people felt that they could come in and they could browse without being bothered. It was okay, it was acceptable just to potter gently while you were getting used to being around people. And as a result of that, lots of people started sharing kind of some of the reasons they were in a bookshop or some of the reasons they'd come to town. It's been a real privilege, actually, to be let into confidences of people and to have some joyous and glorious and bonkers and all kinds of discussions in the shop as a result of that. It's very heartwarming. And certainly we've had people coming into the bookshop saying, you're a bookshop, you know things. What is, where is, who can I find? So we're sort of a bit like an unofficial knowledge centre.
Tourist information centre as well. Now, tell me about the awards. As I mentioned up front, you've had the British Book Awards Independent Bookshop of the Year for us at the South West, and now you're in the running for another award. Just tell me how they came about and what they are.
Well, they're organised by the Bookseller magazine. So big industry awards. People often refer to them as the BAFTAs of the book industry. I mean, our category is probably one of the smallest. So it's run by the Bookseller, and it had always been an aspiration to enter, but we sort of felt like we probably needed to have been around for a little while. It was not something to do in year one necessarily, and decided to submit an entry. So it's kind of down to bookshops to decide whether they want to put themselves forward for it. Well, they wanted quite a lot of information about trading figures, about our story, about our place in the community. It's pretty rigorous, and we had to kind of condense all this into 1,000 words of readable, compelling copy. So worked hard on that. We're delighted to have been shortlisted for the region, and we thought that was pretty good for, a 3-year-old bookshop. Then we had to submit another. When we found we'd been shortlisted, we had to submit another entry of another 1,000 words, but it couldn't be repeating anything that we had said in the first round. So, we were really then developing our story and touching on some of the things that we've already talked about our role in the community, about the things that we stand for. We sort of made the theme of it small but mighty and slightly fighty, because our footprint isn't huge, but we are on a bit of a mission with this shop, and I think we articulated that quite well. We talked a lot about sustainability, which is where I think with Amber's expertise we probably are quite pioneering. So submitted our second round entry, and then we're completely astonished to have won for the Southwest. I mean, we were up against some seriously good bookshops, many of whom we know. And now we are going through next month on May the 13th to actually attend the Nibbies at Grosvenor House in London, like one of those sort of fancy award ceremonies you see on TV. And we will find out if we if we've won the national award. We're being sort of realistic and managing our expectations. We are still very new and we're very small, and we really now are up against the big boys. But, it's going to be great fun to be there, and we're just delighted to have got this far.
It sounds great. I mean, whatever you're doing, you're doing it extremely well. So, obvious question, I suppose. 3 years on from opening the shop, any regrets about doing what you did? I can't imagine there are.
Probably we shouldn't eat so many Belgian ice buns when we were doing the decorating, but apart from that, I haven't looked at an ice Belgian bun since.
Obviously, no serious qualms about taking the leap.
No, and I often think I probably never felt more purposeful about what I'm doing. We have a lot of fun. I mean, clearly it was a big risk, and there can be moments on a cold, wet Tuesday in February when no one is coming through the door because people are still recovering from Christmas. And I think in year one, we sort of thought, oh my goodness, has everyone bought everything they'll ever need from us? Is that it? But you learn to take the bigger, longer view of your trading figures. No, I think not. I mean, we have an enormous amount of fun and we laugh a lot.
That's got to be good, hasn't it? So what's the future for the FOLDE bookshop then? Where do you see yourselves in 5 years' time?
Well, we've just gone through the process to become a certified B Corp organisation, which has been incredible. And that took us about 7 or 8 months. So being part of an organisation network of businesses recognised for having the highest standards of social and environmental concern has been a huge thing. So a little bit of a rest from that, I think. But we've got a great lineup of author events that we're doing. Someday in the future, we have a dream vision of having amazing premises with event space and cafe and all of that. We're not there yet. That's a long-term pipe dream. But in 5 years, who knows?
Well, thank you very much, Karen and Amber, for coming and talking to us about the FOLDE bookshop. You're at the top of Gold Hill if anybody wants to come and have a look. And we wish you well in everything you do and indeed in the forthcoming awards.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Today we have the pleasure of welcoming onto the BV podcast Peter Sale, who's chairman of the Shaftesbury Rotary Club, and he'll be telling us about an exciting venture that currently involves children from 2 Shaftesbury primary schools, the RotaKids. Welcome, Peter. What, in essence, are the Shaftesbury RotaKids?
Basically, Shaftesbury Rotary Club, who I represent, have a number of projects that we operate on a national basis through Rotary, and one of them is RotaKids. RotaKids are young people in schools usually. They don't have to be, but they're usually in schools. They are aged 7 up to 11, and what they do is that they run a Rotary Club. So they run a club, much like our local Rotary Club, but they're doing it obviously in school rather than like we do, meeting once or twice a fortnight or whatever in a hotel somewhere. So they are groups of young people running their own Rotary Club, doing the same things that we do.
And one of the important things that you do in the Rotary Club and the RotaKids do as well is raising money for charity.
Absolutely. Rotary is a voluntary organisation. We are all working business people or ex-business people that are retired, and what we're about is supporting our local and larger community. We raise money for a local charity, and we also run events for the local community. We support people in need locally, but Rotary also has projects beyond the locality. It has national and indeed international projects. So our RotaKids are doing something similar, but their emphasis is very much on supporting their local community.
And just like the grown-up Rotary Club, they vote, I gather, for a president, a secretary, treasurer, and so on. Great way to get them learning how committees work.
Absolutely, because they have meetings, just like we have meetings. As you say, they elect a president, they elect a club secretary, a treasurer. They have meetings, they organise those meetings, they keep minutes of those meetings, they plan what they're going to do, and then at the next meeting they review the targets and the actions that they've made at the last meeting and follow them up. They do it just like we do it. Actually, often they do it better than us because they don't seem to argue quite as much.
That's good to hear. Now, you've got 2 RotaKid clubs in Shaftesbury, haven't you?
We have. We started the first one at Abbey School 2 years ago, so they're in their second year. And then this year we started a second one at Shaftesbury Primary School. The only issue with Abbey has been that last year, first time we'd done it, they have to apply to join. And last year we had 15, which was fine. That made a nice club. But it was so successful last year that this year we had 50 youngsters wanting to get involved. So what we've had to do at Abbey is run a different club each of the 3 terms so that everybody who actually wanted to and qualified to do it got the chance. So, funnily enough, I'm actually meeting them again on Thursday, and this will be the 3rd group of youngsters at Abbey. And on Thursday they'll be electing their positions, you know, their board along the lines that we've just been talking about for this term. Shaftesbury are in their first year, and they have about 15 youngsters doing it as well.
And do you, in the grown-up Rotary Club, do you oversee them?
We go along. I go to Abbey School. A colleague of mine, Tim Cook, goes to Shaftesbury School. And we have deputies who go along when we can't. But we're not there to tell them what to do. It's very much their club. They discuss what they want to discuss. They come up with the ideas about what they want to do in the community. We're only there to advise, and if you like, to stop them perhaps making a decision that would be a bad decision. You know, we would advise them if we thought something wouldn't work or there were legalities associated with it where they were getting themselves into difficult water, doing things they shouldn't be doing. But we're very much there as a support. We don't tell them what to do or how to do it.
Peter, from what you've been saying, the Shaftesbury RotaKids have been becoming more popular?
It is. We're limited a little bit by our own resources, so I don't know how many more clubs we can sustain. 2 clubs, is already several people looking after it, the main link and the stand-in, the deputy. I'd like to have it in more schools, and there are other models, by the way. I'm talking about RotaKids today, but there are other models that we can run with a similar idea, but for slightly older youngsters, for instance, in secondary school. But we are a little bit limited by resources. And we're also very keen to consolidate what we're doing and make sure it all works well before we move on and maybe start another one.
It's a national movement, isn't it, RotaKids?
It is, but interestingly, there aren't RotaKids all over the place, even though you've got Rotary clubs all over the country, and quite a few even in our area. RotaKids clubs are sometimes few and far between. So we are one of the few clubs across our area that's actually running the initiative. And interestingly, I mean, we recently had our district conference where all the area the clubs go to a conference, and the head teacher from Abbey that I've been talking about, he actually went to the conference, or he came in on Zoom actually, and spoke to the conference about the initiative, because we're trying to encourage more schools and more clubs to get involved.
I see that one of the rather fun activities that the Abbey School RotaKids did recently was a bingo session.
It was indeed, and it was great. It was really good. I went along, and they were fantastic, because basically the RotaKids ran bingo for the whole school, and you didn't get the whole school in the hall in one go. They came in over several sessions, but it was the RotaKids that organised it and ran it. And indeed, one of the RotaKids was the caller. He called out the numbers. His mum is also involved in bingo, so he was a bit of an expert at it. I was incredibly impressed with him, the way he did it. But they ran the event. They organised it. They checked the numbers. They checked who'd won. They organised the prizes that were given out. And of course, they raised the money from the event. And funnily enough, we will be having a meeting next couple of days to decide where the money goes. In fact, I'm not sure exactly how much money they raised on that afternoon, but it'll be a significant amount of money. It won't be a few pounds. It will probably be into the hundreds, and we'll decide, or they'll decide. We'll just give advice, and they'll decide where that money's going to go.
That's lovely. There are some Ukrainian children at the Abbey Primary School, aren't there? They'd never, of course, been introduced to bingo before. As I understand it, it must have been rather puzzling for them at first.
Do you know what? It was amazingly well organised. What they'd done, they got some of the older youngsters to work with some of the younger ones. So the older ones were helping the younger ones to fill in their bingo cards. And the older ones were also helping some of those that perhaps had, like the Ukrainians perhaps, that had never played bingo before. And the RotaKids were running around the room to make sure it all happened and everyone that needed help got it. And it was very exciting. It was really good, really good.
Children can be a powerful force for change in society, can't they, Peter? And I imagine that RotaKids is one way that they can be influential and understand that they can.
Absolutely. They're having fun, obviously. We want them to enjoy it, but they're developing an understanding of community. They're developing knowledge and skills alongside in terms of communication, teamwork and so on. And of course, what they also do is that they, having got the awareness of community and issues that matter, they're then sharing those with other pupils in the school. So they become ambassadors, really, for the programme. And they're so proud to be part of it that they, I don't think they realise how powerful they actually are in terms of bringing about change. But they are, definitely.
At the moment, the children are just concentrating their charitable efforts towards the local area, is that right? Might they start to look at causes elsewhere, abroad, for instance?
Yeah, no, we can do that, because, Rotary has causes nationally and internationally. I suppose one of our biggest would be polio. Rotary's had a key role in eradicating polio around the world. And we're very, very much involved in disaster relief around the world. We help in, for instance, you mentioned earlier, we help in Ukraine, we help in lots of countries. We send a lot of necessary equipment into war-torn areas, and we're always raising money for these initiatives as well. And indeed, I mean, if the RotaKids want to, they can do that as well. But we start off, I mean, more than anything, we want them to be aware of their local community and some of the issues. But certainly, we would never rule out bigger issues across national or international spheres if that's what they wanted to do. Absolutely.
And finally, Peter, I assume the RotaKids activities are just concentrated on term time, or are they? Maybe not.
No, they're not. They're not. The last thing that they were involved in was we did an Easter fun run, and we actually ran that during the Easter holiday. It was at the end of the Easter holiday before they went back to school, and we planned it before the holiday, and we had RotaKids at the Easter fun run. We were raising money for the Stars Appeal, which is Salisbury Hospital. We were also raising some money for more local charities, and RotaKids came along. They ran the refreshments halfway round the runs. They gave out the water. They gave out jelly babies so that people got sugar when they needed it to keep them going. We even had 2 RotaKids who were dressed as bunnies, who actually started off the races, started off the run. So that was all done in their own time in their holiday. And we have another event coming up in the next few weeks, which I'm pretty certain falls into the holiday as well, which is our cycle ride. And again, the RotaKids are very much involved. That will be on a Sunday, and the RotaKids will come out on that Sunday. They're going to help me run skills tests for the family run. So, no, it's not just term time. Don't you think that's great? I think it's wonderful. They'll give up their holidays and actually come and do this stuff as well.
You must be really proud of them.
I'm incredibly proud. We've had some very good feedback. We had our district governor come and visit because he was so pleased with what was going on. He went to visit the Abbey RotaKids at the school. We've had mentions, as I said, at the district conference. The head teacher from Abbey spoke there. We've been recognised in various quarters in terms of what we do. But having said all that, for me, it's not about that. It's not about that at all. It's about the RotaKids and what they do, and just feeling proud of their incredible commitment, motivation and contribution, really.
And thank you very much to Peter Sale, Chairman of the Shaftesbury Rotary Club, for talking to us today for the BV podcast.
The barriers are gone for £1.3 million. Dorset residents had almost forgotten what Sturminster Bridge looked like, but finally the bank stabilisation work is complete, as Rachel Rowe reports. In August 2019, they were put up as a temporary safety measure. Now, almost 5 years later, the plastic railings on the approach to Sturminster Newton have finally been removed, and the view of the bridge looks remarkably different, with a new footpath and the striking absence of barriers and temporary traffic controls. Work to stabilise the bank of the River Stour is complete at last, but there was much more to this complex project than most people probably realised while they were stuck in the traffic queue. The bank between the ancient town mill and the early 16th century town bridge has been shifting for many years. It's a man-made structure which was formed when the road was relocated more than 100 years ago, and was therefore never intended to support the weight of modern vehicles. Over time, vibrations, overloading and water ingress have weakened the material and caused it to start failing, while repeated storm events and flooding removed the fine materials from the base of the slope, causing further movements. The footway has been repeatedly patched and repaired, but by 2019 the movement had become too great, and it was decided that a more permanent solution was required to protect the highway. A temporary solution using gabions to make the footway usable had already failed. It started to move even before those initial works were complete. The A357 runs along the south bank of the Stour. To stop any further soil movement and protect the busy road, the bank has now been strengthened by Dorset Council in a major project costing £1.3 million. When the BV first reported on the issue in 2021, the anticipated budget for the completed project was £400,000. Almost 500 soil nails were drilled into the embankment, with grout securing the soil nail to the stable material beneath. The erosion matting was then placed over the bank and stainless steel mesh on top of that. The nut on each soil nail was then installed and tightened down to tension the mesh and matting which holds the bank in place. The nail heads remain exposed so that they can be maintained periodically, ensuring the mesh remains tensioned so that it can retain the slope effectively. The final part of the work, sowing the bank with wildflower seeds, reinstating the footway, bordering the road and installing the rail fence, is now complete. Project manager Zoran Marek explained why the unsightly barriers were in place for so long. Over the course of 2 years, we monitored the embankment for movement and also recorded vibrations in order to establish a baseline. The monitoring told us that we had a significant problem with slippage from the embankment. This is why we were forced to complete the project through the winter months. It couldn't wait until next year. We had to compete with 7 big storms before Christmas, which caused around 10 days delay to the project timeline. We'd looked at the various options for completing the task. One was taking the work back to include the entire road, but that would have been a huge issue as it would have completely closed the road. Another option was to use sheet piles, but that was also a huge engineering job. The most effective option was to use the nails and a mesh. The nails will be there forever and a day. The nails themselves are 90 millimeters in diameter and are between 8 and 12 meters long, depending on how they interface with the geology. The mesh is critical. It holds everything in place and prevents loose material from falling. The protective matting holds the wildflower seeds in place. A specific wildflower mix that is low in maintenance has been chosen so that the banks don't need to be continually trimmed. Once it starts to grow and seed, that iconic picture postcard view will be back. We're continuing to monitor the work for any problems. We monitored vibrations during the work, and because we had a baseline measurement, we were able to demonstrate there was no risk to property in the immediate area. During the work, we also removed the large willows that were found to be damaging the gabions at the river edge, which provides scour protection, but other trees are being planted in the area to mitigate the environmental impact. A Dorset Council spokesperson said, "Our team and our contractors, Heidelberg, worked in some challenging conditions, including heavy rainfall that caused higher than normal river levels. They've done a fantastic job and have created a safer place for all." During the works, the eastbound lane of the A357 was closed, with traffic signals in place to maintain traffic flow both ways. Zoran explained that an extra sensitive system called Urban 64, which is a more intelligent way of operating than the standard highways traffic lights, was used during the project. The system was more effective at monitoring queue lengths and also allowed us to use a fourth arm, so the residents who directly fronted the works had an opportunity to join the traffic flow. "The workforce has been fantastic," said a Dorset Council spokesperson. "It really is so wonderful not to see the awful plastic railings anymore. I would like to thank all the residents for their patience. We got there." Zoran highlighted a lot of the unseen work of civil engineering that was invisible to most people in traffic queues waiting to cross Sturminster Bridge. "I am proud of this whole project," he said. "We have protected the highway and also saved the bank from collapsing into the river. We also kept communications working. We had a lot of stakeholders to coordinate. And of course, we have helped to restore the iconic entrance to Sturminster Newton." Well, sadly, that's all we have time for. Until next time, it's goodbye from me, Terry Bennett.
And goodbye from me, Jenny Devitt. Until next time.